Good evening, everyone. Broadcasting live, March 24th. Today's quote is from the Vakkali Sutta. So Vakkali he was unhappy as a layperson because he was very happy to see the Buddha. And as a layperson, he didn't have the opportunity to see the Buddha often. The Buddha was, of course, very beautiful. And so Vakkali was one of these people who was enamored by the Buddha's features. And so he would go to see the Buddha quite often, but he wasn't happy because as a layperson he didn't have the opportunity to see the Buddha as often as he liked. So he became a monk. But this sutta says that he was actually quite sick. And so he asked his fellow monks, go find the Buddha, tell him I'm sick and please see if he'll come visit me. And the Buddha comes and he's ecstatic and he tries to get up. And the Buddha says, don't get up, it's okay, I'll sit down in one of the seats. And having sat down, he said to them, he gave this standard question, Kachi te Vakkali kamaniyang kachi yapaniyang. Can you stand it, Vakkali? Can you bear it? Are you able to live with this sickness? Kachi dukkha vedana patti kamanti, no abhikamanti. How is it? Are the painful feelings going away and not getting? Are they decreasing and not increasing? Patikamo sanang panyayati no abhikamo. Are they reducing, not increasing? So he's asking, are you well, basically? And Vakkali says, na me bante kamaniyang, na yapaniyang. This, I can't bear it. I can't stand it. Balha me dukkha vedana abhikamanti. My painful feelings are getting worse, not decreasing. They're getting stronger, not weaker. And so the Buddha realizes, well, he's possibly not going to get over this. And he says, well then, Vakkali, do you have anything you regret? Do you have any worries or regrets about the past? Anything that's bothering you? And he says, yes, Bante, I have some unresolved, many, not a few not a few worries. And he says, well, luckily, is it in regards to your morality? And he says, no, I have no problem with my morality. He says, well, if it's not about your morality, then what are you worried about? Making the point that really, anything else you could be worried about is not really important at this point. You're sick, on your deathbed. Is your morality pure? Is your mind pure? You have good intentions? So what could be wrong? He says, well, I haven't seen the Buddha in a long time. I don't get to see him often, and being sick, I'm not able to go and see the Buddha, and I want to go and see you, and my body doesn't let me do it. And how does the Buddha respond? He says, Alang Vakkali, enough Vakkali. King te imina putukai naditena. What reason do you want to see this awful, repugnant, rotten body? What good is it for you to see this body? Vakkali had it all wrong, you know. He thought thinking about the Buddha meant thinking about his physical form. That's not what thinking about the Buddha is at all. This is why we kind of have sort of an ambivalence towards images. People think a Buddha image allows you to think about the Buddha. And, you know, yes, it can, but only as a starting point. The image itself isn't the Buddha. The image can remind you of the Buddha, and when you see the Buddha, oh right, the Buddha, and then you start thinking about the qualities of the Buddha. Not the physical qualities, the mental qualities. He was perfectly self-enlightened, endowed with both knowledge of the truth and conduct according to the truth. It means he practiced what he preached. The uncomparable trainer of humans and angels, well gone, all these kind of things, worthy of gifts and offerings. Just a worthy sort of person. Blessed, enlightened. And then so the Buddha says, Yo ko Vakkali Dhammang pasati so mang pasati. It's a famous, fairly famous quote. Who sees the Dhamma sees me. Yo mang pasati so Dhammang pasati. Dhamman hi Vakkali pasanto mang pasati. Mang pasanto Dhammang pasati. Basically saying, the Buddha is one with the Dhamma. It's the Dhamma that you have to get to. You know. To see the Buddha, you have to see the Dhamma, and it's one and the same. And so he tries to teach Vakkali about the truth, because Vakkali has this idea of the beautiful body of the Buddha as being something pleasant, something he can find happiness in. And he says, what do you think, Vakkali? Is rupa, is this form permanent or impermanent? So he has to admit, well, aniccaṃ bhante. This is what you could look at this as a form of reporting. Like we do these courses and we meet with the teacher once a day. The Buddha did this as well. He asked the question, Tangging manyasi Vakkali rupang niccang va aniccaṃ vati. What do you think of form? Is it permanent or impermanent? Stable or unstable? Constant or inconstant? Aniccaṃ bhante. Yes, it's changing all the time. You know? Not only are we getting older and our body's changing, but the experience of the body only arises and ceases. What we think of as the body is made up of experiences that arise and cease. Those experiences are changing all the time. So it's unstable, you know, there's nothing that you can hold on to. This is why it can change so quickly, and suddenly the form is changed. You cut yourself, you hurt yourself, you get sick. The whole experience can change, and then you're at a loss because you weren't prepared for that. You're clinging to something this way. You want to see the beautiful body of the Buddha, and then he gets sick and he can't go and see the Buddha. He loses the rupa that he wants to see. And he says, what is yang pana niccang dukkhaṃ? This is actually from the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta as well. It's a standard teaching. Yang pana niccang dukkhaṃ va sukhang tang sukhang va. What is impermanent, is that suffering or is it happiness? So this is the idea that the inconstancy of it means it can't fulfill your desires. It won't go in accordance with your desires. You want it to be, it doesn't come. You want it to go, it doesn't go. It's not in sync with our desires, so we suffer as a result. We get stressed as a result. And it says, well, yang pananichang dukkhang viparinama dhammang. Yang pananichang dukkhang viparinama dhammang. What is impermanent and suffering and subject to alteration, subject to change. Kalang nutang samanupasitum. Is it proper for that to say about that? Etang mama, this is mine. Eso hamasami, this I am. Eso meyata, this is myself. These are the three types of clinging with views, clinging with conceit, clinging with craving. Etang mama, this is mine. That's clinging with craving. Some things we cling to because we want them. Eso hamasami, this I am. That's clinging with conceit. So we think of I am this, I am that. I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm beautiful, or I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm etc. Weak. This is conceit. Clinging to characteristics. Eso meyata. Eso meyata. This is myself. That's view, clinging with view. So we cling to the idea that this is me, this is an entity, this is a thing. The self exists, the soul exists. I can control things, I can control my body because this body is myself. Those are views. We cling through views. Etang mama eso hamasmi eso meyata. And so he basically repeats the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. And Vakkali, having heard this, then the Buddha left, and Vakkali asked his friends to lift him up and carry him to Isigili. Because he was ready to die, and he said, how can one like me think of dying among the houses? He didn't want to die in a house. He wanted to die as a monk. So they took him to Isigili, and some stuff happened. It's not really important. Anyway, let's get on to more of a lesson, no? There's some lesson here, but I think the overall lesson is about the teaching, not the teacher, right? It's easy to focus on person, place, and thing without focusing on our own wisdom and our own understanding. And nobody else can lead us to enlightenment. It's kind of, in general, the attachment to form. You can attach to the form of meditation, say, okay, I have to do an hour of meditation, or I have to do so many hours of meditation, without actually meditating. You're so focused on the idea of the form that you forget the present moment. So it goes with all kinds of form. You can focus so much on a teacher, or even on their words. You can like what they say without actually keeping it in mind, putting it to practice, that kind of thing. I mean, it's not to say that we all do this, but we have to be careful not to. People like Vakkali got into an extreme of watching the Buddha, not listening to his teachings. And eventually he became enlightened. But it's something about teachers and people as well. A lot of the Buddha's teaching is about, I think it was a couple of nights ago, not being critical of others, looking at your own faults. Sometimes we go to a monastery or a meditation center and all we can see are the faults of others. It's common. There's a lot of corruption in monasteries, so it's not without its justification, but it doesn't really help. On the other hand, we sometimes put people up on a pedestal, and when we find out they're human, well, we become discouraged, which we really shouldn't. If we focus on the teachings, they're much more important. You can ask yourself, are these teachings good? And if the teachings are good, stick by them. See the Dhamma. Don't worry too much about seeing the Buddha. So, and simple teaching, something to think about. I can post the Hangout. You're all welcome if anybody has any questions. I understand that I'm quite limiting my online presence, and I think some people are complaining they want to ask questions and they can't come on here. I understand that. I just don't have a means of sort of filtering, and I'm doing the best I can, but I think you can't help everyone. So if you really want help from me, you got to make the effort to come here or sign up for one of the slots for an online meditation course and actually do some meditating. Anyway, don't know if there are any questions. I'm happy to answer if you come on the Hangout. Otherwise, just say goodnight. It's going to get fairly hectic the next week and a half. Next 20, 30 years probably. No. Yeah, the next week and a half probably is going to be a bit rough. I may not be able to broadcast every night. Okay, I'm going to say good night. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming out and meditating together. Have a good night.